This conference is being recorded.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio in high fidelity. People tell me every day love is gonna come my way, searching for clues that I hope to find. Want something that's gonna last. I wanna live and forget the past. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will do me good. Wondering where the wind will blow. You got a clue to let me know. Don't hold it back down. Give me a sign. Tell me something really good. If it's true, you know you should. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will do me I'm feeling better to be I wanna look back at all of them someday, and I wanna even though it hurts me I know things will come even though it hurts me I know this change is doing
Aloha. Good evening. This is Andrew Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona, the Spiritual Image Productions on Blog Talk Radio and freeconferencing.com and Ustream, establishing and maintaining right relationships through human body. Aloha and welcome to tonight's Andrew Aloha Live. Tonight we're talking with Charles Swedrock in finding out what's real. Aloha, Chuck.
Oh, hi, Andrew. Thanks for the invitation to share.
And thank you for being here. Just to let you know, Chuck is organizer and co-facilitator of the Tucson IANS, or International Association for Near-Death Studies Experience Sharing Spiritual Explorations meetup group since September of 2008. Chuck, after 40 years in a corporate career with after-hours involvement in a variety of spiritual and human service areas, has switched paths. Synchronicity has been a major factor in bringing the experiences and situations that uniquely prepared the way for him. And if you want any more information about Chuck, you can go to www.tucsonians, and that's IANDS.org, and go from there. So, and we're going to come back and talk to Chuck here in a little bit. I just want to give a big aloha to all of our underwriters that help make this show happen from week to week, month to month, year to year, beginning with Mahadikini Lore, at www.mahadikini.com. Mahadikini Lore's life has been a personal journey exploring sexuality and spirituality for over 20 years. She's a certified tantric counselor and tantric healer, and a certified mind sound teacher. Mahadikini Lore is also a graduate of Margot Non's year-long Sky Dancer Township Facilitator Training Program, as well as a current member of the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists Club, and a charter member of the Association of Sexual Energy Professionals. She regularly attends trainings and conferences to keep current with the latest information and research on sexual education. And I gotta apologize because I think the pollens are flying like crazy here in Flagstaff or something, because my sinuses is at least the last week or two have been totally like crazy, but that's besides the point. Anyhow, we also have the 90-day Ascension Journey at www.90dayascensionjourney.com. When you sign up for the 90-day Ascension Journey, you will be facilitated with defining and redefining your soul true life purpose. You will be assisted with finding out what Ascension means to you. On this journey, you will be provided with tools, techniques, and assistance to empower you to connect and reconnect with yourself, your emotions and feelings in your mind, body, and spirit. Through a universal soul-centered process, you will be going through a lifelong transformation that will allow you to move forward with your endeavors and never look back for you if you dare. And for those of you that are interested, I wrote the book version of this about a year ago, to supplement this journey. And so if you go to spiritualwomen'sproduction.com or the 90dayascensionjourney.com, there you'll find a GIF or a picture of the book. You can click on that, and that'll take you to a page that will give you more information on the book. There's also a place where you can read the introduction in the first chapter, the table of contents, and the resource guide as well if you want. And then you can either order it there, or you can order it on Amazon.com or also Kindle if you want, and go from there. The only difference between ordering from Amazon and Kindle is that I will sign it if you order from me personally. Anyhow, we also have the 2017 MUFON Symposium at www.mufonsymposium.com. The MUFON Symposium is the world's most respected meeting of the mind on the UFO phenomena. From a scientific standpoint, there is no other event on Earth that even comes close. Come one, come all, and be immersed in our quest to unravel the mystery of the UFO, to be held at the J.W. Marriott in Las Vegas, Nevada, from the 21st to the 23rd of July of this year. And if you happen to see me there, just come up and say hi, give me a big high five, and let me know at least that you're there. And just to let you know, next month, which is tomorrow, I'm going to be doing an interview series. I'm literally going to be interviewing a number of these speakers that are going to be talking there at the MUFON Symposium. I'll be interviewing them on May 21st, 28th, and June 11th and June 18th, I believe, are the dates. I'll be interviewing. That's kind of weird. I'll be interviewing. I believe John Bradenberg, who's I believe is a keynote speaker, and then also Dr. James Woodward, or Professor James Woodward at University of California at Fullerton, I believe, and then also Michael Schrott and Andrew Basaggio. If you go to spiritualwomen'sproduction.com, on the right hand side, there's a place where you can sign up for the email list and to keep abreast of everything that's going on. And then also on the left hand side, there's a link that says SIPS Divine Calendar. You can click on that and scroll down, or go to the SIPS Divine Events page at the top. There's a button for that where you can find out what's going on for the month's activities, or if you want to go over for the rest of the year's activities, then you can click on SIPS Divine Calendar, and that'll give you an overview of where, and you can just check out the dates in terms of who I'll be interviewing when. And so, and also for those of you that are interested, in June, I'm scheduling a workshop, a seminar. I don't know if this is premature to say this, because Mercury is still retrograde, but that's besides the point. It'll be out of retrograde tomorrow. Woohoo! I can't wait. But anyhow, tomorrow in June, I'm scheduling a workshop to be done in Tucson, and again, I haven't updated my website to reflect that yet, but you can either go there in next week or so, or email me, call me, text me, or just stay tuned, and then I'll be putting some more information out soon enough. So if you're interested in participating in that workshop, it'll be a three-day workshop, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in I believe June 23rd through the 25th, and then if you're interested, you can check it out and go from there. So, yeah, we're back to Chuck Swedrock, all the way out of Tucson, Arizona. Aloha, Chuck.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. And if you can just kind of give our audience, especially for those that don't know you, an overview, a bio of who Chuck is, where you grew up, where you were raised at, and what you did to get to where you're at now, and then we'll go from there. How's that?
Okay, well, it's a lifelong journey, and I'll give you the cliff notes if I can.
Okay.
I was raised in a pretty traditional Christian environment, Protestant fundamentalist. Probably as a young boy, say 11, 12, I accepted an altar call and gave my life to the Lord. And following that culture, and I still hold that to be a very dear experience in my life. However, when I got to be, when I graduated from high school and went away to college, I had begun asking the questions that there weren't answers to at that time, and they would say, well, you have to accept it on blind faith, basically. And of course, in that environment, the principal source is the Bible. Well, I went away to college, and I kind of turned my back. Didn't need that anymore. It didn't fit, and followed essentially the scientific path from there on. Became a computer jock. Took one of the first basic computer science programs out of Penn State, and got an incredible job right out of college. Took 2 years off to go visit Uncle Sam, as they wanted my services in the Marine Corps, and then I got to come back and do basically the same work, and finished off a career with basically the same organization, Xerox. They outsourced data processing for the new company logo on the paycheck. That was a 40-year career, and very satisfying and complete. Along the way, though, I'm having life experiences that begin to really form who I've become now and what I do now. In the early 80s, I had a dentist appointment and was having some fillings replaced. And I don't know, I kind of tell the joke of going to the dentist, so it felt a little like a near-death experience. But I don't believe I had heard that label at that point in time. I just showed up, and the hygienist prepped me, cotton roll, rubber dam, metal clamps. I'm the captive audience. The dentist comes, gives me a couple shots of Novocaine, and while he's waiting for it to take effect, he shares an anecdote. He was shopping the day before for furniture, and met a salesman. The salesman told the dentist he had just returned to work after being hospitalized with a cardiac condition. The salesman told the dentist that while he was in the hospital, his heart stopped and he met beings there he recognized as deceased family members as he went into the light, that kind of scenario. And then those beings introduced him to other beings there, members of the extended family of this salesman, that he had no prior knowledge of before this experience. They were, extended family deceased, but he was resuscitated and recovered and did the research and authenticated these beings, extended family members, that he had not known prior to this experience. Well, about this time in the story, I noticed the hygienist, her face was just frozen with fear. This was totally outside her comfort zone. And I wanted kind of reach out and say, I think this is comforting or whatever, but I'm just at the mercy of the procedure there. The dentist pinches my gum, decides it's time to go to work, and that was it. So at the end of that procedure, what do you do with that information? I had a very busy life, building a career, family with 2 young children. So it was just a seed that was planted that would later germinate to be, really profound and leading me down this path. Probably the most significant personal event from a transcendental perspective happened to me following August 1985, August 15th. I was standing at the sink, just finishing dishes and drying my hands when the phone rang. My wife answered the phone and she said, "It's for you, it's your dad." Which was code for my stepfather. He was my dad from the time I was 6 years old, and I carry his name, Swedrock. And I just said hello, and he didn't say I got bad news, he didn't embrace me. I said hello, he said, David killed himself. That abrupt, and David being my youngest brother, had committed suicide. And without any forewarning, I had nothing to brace myself except to go into immediate grief and sobbing. If I had time to think, maybe I would have tried to protect my children or whatever from the response. But in retrospect, it was the right response to show an authentic emotion on getting news like that. So I kind of just put that on hold and drove the 4 hours down to Pennsylvania where my family homestead was, and went through the week. And this, I would like to put a footnote in this, is what to me church is about. It's about community. And you can wrestle with the issues of belief system and dogma, but it was community that poured their hearts out to our family in this crisis. And my brother had come home from a wedding and obviously despondent, went to the gun cabinet, got a high-powered rifle, and went up to his bedroom with the muzzle under his chin. My parents were sitting in the bedroom, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
Incident. And so that church poured their hearts out. The ambulance came, took the body to a funeral home in another town. The church, the families there came, before I even got there, 4 hours later, had showed up and cleaned up the bedroom, took the furniture out and burned it, and the only thing left was the picture they put over a bullet hole in the wall. And so I embraced that use of that kind of community for what it really does for us in our lives here. However, went through the week kind of just on remote control, answering the phone, taking in meals, close got service obviously. I get home about a week later, and I call a confidant of mine at the time, my stepmother, and she says, "You need to say goodbye to your brother." And I realized I hadn't done anything to process that initial grief, beyond that point. And I kind of stuck it to go through the necessary, involvement with what was happening. I wasn't really practicing meditating at the time, but I found some quiet time. I'm alone in an easy chair. I reclined, I closed my eyes, and I let the thought go through my mind, "Goodbye, David." And instantly, my consciousness was transported back to Pennsylvania, back to that neighboring town where the body had been taken to a funeral home, into the back of the funeral home where I had never been physically, and to a casket. It was kind of graphic, bear with me for a moment. A casket sitting on top of a gurney, and my consciousness was thrust through the side of that casket into the space on the torso where there should have been a face. It was just an unrealizable mass. And I'm bilocating. I'm aware of my body back in that easy chair, just thrashing from the fear, the horror, the terror, the ghastly nature of what's happening. At the pinnacle of this experience, a male voice spoke into my mind as though there was somebody in the room 3 feet away. The very clear audio of a voice, and it said 3 words, "He's not here." And with that, it was total serenity, complete resolution, and, just a blissful moment, and I'm reunited with my body, and, from that point forward, processing that, I can really say that's where I gave up the fear of death, knowing that there's something more. But it also, going through life, begins to enter other questions, perspective. Well, wait a minute, in a crisis, I can get a message in clear language, understandable, my language. Why can't I get that more often? Why when I'm feeling, why can't they just give me another download? Well, you get what you need, I guess.
When you need it.
Yeah. So some months after that, really, there had been a crisis brewing in my marriage, and it came to a head, and actually then proceeded to the breakup of the marriage, which was the next phase of my growth, because I didn't want that. I've been programmed in that community, marriage is forever. So that I had also vowed that my kids were going to come from a broken home, which had been my path as a very young child. But there are some things you don't have control over, and that was one, and it led me into accepting that reality, which was just thrust on me, and learning that I needed something in my life, so kind of a spiritual nature. Up to that point in time, I kind of neglected that, except for just basic, occasions and stuff. And what I realized is I went through a divorce recovery group. And while I felt branded a failure, I had this big D emblazoned on my forehead. It felt like I was branded. And then I walked in this room with, 50, 60 other adults all in that same boat, and it was, a whole new world. And I went to the support group there called Neutral Round. And then eventually got to the point where I was taking facilitator training and leading those support groups for others. And that turned out to be tremendous training for what I do today is in having support groups and sharing groups for people who have these kind of experiences or people who are just seeking and trying to find a path. So moving on ahead, I went back to a church environment that was like the one I'd been planted in, and while I loved some of the spiritual pieces of it, the music and some of the prayer and meditation, I couldn't deal with the dogma again. And then I met someone and they belonged to a Unity church, so I tried that, and that seemed much more of a fit. One day at this Unity church, they said, we're going to have this man come and share his near-death experience. A couple of Sundays out in the future, and that seed erupted in my mind. I was going to be there, and so that's where I got my first exposure firsthand to somebody to have one of these experiences. That gentleman is pretty well known in the science world, at least, because he was one of the initial experiencers studied by Ken Ring and the founders of IONS, and his name is very familiar from a different perspective is Tom Sawyer, but he was just a part of the, he lived in the Rochester, New York area, not too far from where I lived, and he had experience when he was pinned under a truck, working on his truck, and squeezed the breath out of his life out of him, and he was under there 25 minutes or so before they were able to get it off and resuscitate him, and then he had this profound experience. So when I showed up to hear his talk, he talked for 2 hours, and I mean, There's a book out there, it's kind of a classic now, if you can find it, what Tom Sawyer learned from dying, and certainly recommend that for anyone who wants to take a, journey into this phenomenon, because Tom's experience was one of the most profound still to this day. And the definition of many of these experiences as comes through the formal community, research community, is the after effects. How are they transformed by the experience? And Tom is touted as being one of the most psychic ability, who had the most psychic abilities following one of these experiences that we've studied even since. So, I could go on about that, but let me move forward. So, went on and joined IANS, discovered IANS a few years after that, and joined at the professional level so I could get their quarterly journal, which publishes research on this phenomenon. A footnote on the history of IANS: the label near-death experience came about in 1975 when Dr. Raymond Moody wrote a book, Life After Life, and it was filled with anecdotes of quite a few individuals that had these experiences, and he coined the term, maybe even unintentionally, near-death experience, but it caught, and it's what the public kind of uses to acknowledge these experiences. Of course, now we know you don't have to be near death. You can have these experiences from a lot of different stimuli, or even just coming into your life out of spiritual necessity. But nevertheless, near-death experience is out there as a phenomenon, but Raymond's book just essentially identified a lot of individuals with anecdotes, very compelling, but a bunch of researchers or professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, cardiologists, and a couple others, wanted to go more in depth to understand this phenomenon, but nobody would publish their research. So that's where IANS was formed, initially called the Association for the Scientific Study of Near-Death Phenomena. And they've published a peer-reviewed academic journal once a quarter since 1978. Of course, it was incorporated as IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, in 1981, when Ken Ring, the initial president, decided that if you had an acronym for your group that started with the letters ASS, you probably weren't going to get the attention you were looking for. So they transformed the title to IANS, which we have today. So we published the quarterly newsletter and the quarterly journal at the professional level. Went on to start a group in the Rochester, New York area, and started going to IANS conferences. If you want a connection with the nature of this experience, I highly recommend this. Go to a conference that has 200 or 300 people who are of the same ilk with this phenomenon, and it's an unforgettable experience. I've been to a lot of conferences like Afterlife conferences and similar, but the IANS conference that focuses on these experiences and people of that ilk is unique. To go to the IANS.org website and you can see about this year's conference. Anyhow, that's where I got connected, and eventually they asked me to go on the board of directors, which I did for 6 years, 2005 to 2011. And moved out here to Arizona in 2008 after I retired, and it's been a joy to do a group here in Arizona, and now we're companion with the group. The group here in Tucson is companion with the group in Mesa. So we bring guest speakers to Tucson and on Thursday night, second Thursday usually, and then we'll drive over to Mesa and have the talk there. That can be found on our website, TucsonIANS.org, or we're getting a new website built called AZIANS.org, ArizonaIANS.org, IANDS seller. Okay, that's my commercial.
So I tell you what, let's go ahead and take a break and play some music. I want to play some. I think I want to play a song called Heaven's Eyes, and send out love, blessings, healings, and this is by Tamara Rodriguez. Unfortunately, she hasn't come out with an album yet. She's an incredible musician and artist, talent artist, and I interviewed her a few years ago. She's been on a couple of shows out in Mexico, like Star Search and stuff like that. And then she decided she wanted to study music in Boston. Then she graduated, and she's been out in Southern California since. And every once in a while, we still stay in touch. And anyhow, the name of the song is called Heaven's Eyes. And again, she doesn't have an album out, but I want to send out love, blessings, healings, angels of light and love to all those people that have had near-death experiences in their family and friends, and of course to you, Chuck, and your family and friends, and me and my family and friends in our vehicles and places of residence that help take care of us. To the President, God knows the President of the United States, of course, and his family and friends, and also to all the kids and the animals and the plants on the planet, especially the ones in need and concern. Anybody you want to add to that, Chuck?
Well, yeah, I want to add it to all those people I would call seekers, the people that, like me, walk this path and are trying to find a sense of reality. What can you trust? What can you depend on? The religious, the scientific fundamentalism, and how do you find what you can really hang your hat on?
Got it. So to everyone else in need and concern, and then we will be back. Heaven's Eyes by Tamara Rodriguez.
Heaven's Eyes.
And we're back. This is Andrew Aloha Live out of Flagstaff, Arizona. Spiritual Image Productions on Blog Talk Radio and freeconferencing.com and Ustream. Establishing and maintaining right relationships for human value. Tonight, we're doing Andrew Aloha Live, talking with Chuck Swedrock out of Tucson in finding out what's real. So far, we've learned that he grew up in the East Coast and became a Christian, and somehow ended up working for was it? Did you say IBM? Is that correct?
Xerox.
Xerox. Out in the East Coast. And that was in Pennsylvania?
Well, no, I was Rochester, New York.
Oh, New York. Got it. And so ended up, and you said you were in the Marines or the Army?
I was in the Marines. I was one of the very few who won the double lottery and got picked to go to the Marines after.
Right. So I ended up in the Marines and then came back and continued his work with the Xerox. And then eventually, his brother committed suicide out in Pennsylvania. So that's when he started learning about death. I believe is that what I heard you saying, Chuck?
That was certainly the most significant experience.
Got it.
At that time, sir.
And somehow ended up getting involved with eventually divorced, and then eventually became involved with IANS, International Association for the Study for Near-Death Studies, and ended up working with them and becoming a director and all kinds of involvement with that group, and eventually relocated out here to Tucson, Arizona, where he started another branching of IANS, and has also was also instrumental in starting a group out in Mesa as well. Is that correct to say that, Chuck?
Well, they already had a group in Mesa, but we've joined efforts now that we pay for speakers to come to Arizona. We'll talk first in Tucson and go to Mesa, the Phoenix area, so we can share the expense of bringing people, to our groups.
Got it. And so now that brings us up to date in terms of where Chuck is right now. Now we have plenty of time, Chuck, and we don't have anybody calling in for questions, but so I guess when you and I initially talked about doing an interview, you gave me the title for tonight's episode being Finding Out What's Real. And so I'm assuming that all ties into IANS with what you're doing now. And so how do you define reality for yourself, Chuck?
Well, certainly for me, it has a meaning that is based on experience. And I like to use the metaphor of the blind man and the elephant. Or actually, I had this image, like a cartoon I put up, which would have people in lap robes, like they were scientists, touching different parts of the elephant, in the traditional parable, where, the one touching the leg thinks it's the trunk, another touching the tail. They each have a different view of what an elephant is because they have a narrow perspective, being blind and touching only part of the object or environment. And so underneath that, I would say, when I'm presenting that model, I would say, what if they agreed to share their individual experiences of an unknown reality? They all gain a greater perception of what an elephant is by sharing this and understanding, near-death experiencers come back and always, or almost always, say they could not bring back all of the information they gained from their experience while they were in their spiritual state. There's no questions that they can't get answered over in the spiritual state, but all of the knowledge and all the perspective of the vastness of the spiritual reality don't fit inside a human being. It's just too expansive. So even back now with experiencers, we will have the struggle that some will say, well, this is what it was like for me, and others will say, no, this is, so they each have their different perspectives, and some of them had multiple experiences. I remember a woman I met in Phoenix area who had 3 near-death experiences.
Wow.
In the first couple of experiences, she talked about going into the light, meeting beings, and all that. In her third experience, there's no light. She's in what often is called the loving void, darkness. And there's a presence there. She senses and said, well, where's the light? And what came back as an answer was, oh, that's for amateurs.
Now it's funny, Chuck, because I've experienced, I don't think I've ever experienced a near-death experience that I know of, but I think I have had about 8 or 9 lives in this lifetime. I must have been cat in another lifetime or something. I've had plenty of those near-death lives, but no, I don't think experiences. So, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what we run up against based on our culture, our background, our history, well, first problem is vocabulary. What is God? What is this spiritual entity which is communicating with me? Is it an angel? Is it a guide? Is it a higher self? So whatever someone's culture is usually shapes that vocabulary, and then beyond that, the experiencer will tell us it was ineffable. In other words, there are portions of the experience that just can't find words for it. It was like, but it was not like. Or very often they'll say there was no time, it all happened at once, and yet they have to tell the narrative in a sequential fashion, so they're kind of parsing it out in bits and pieces. So that vocabulary is the first barrier to comprehending it. The second barrier is belief system, and especially those beliefs which come with very dogmatic components. I mean, we'll just take the example that we're most familiar with us. The Christian biblical perspective, which, the Bible is a document that was created over hundreds of years. And one of the biggest quandaries to me is how people could think, that it is the Word of God, but then somehow God just stopped talking to humans. Only that is the source. And we know so much more now about the spiritual dimension from these experiences. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later about how we can trust these experiences, how we trust the spiritual knowledge that's coming to us now.
Well, now that you're talking about the Bible, Chuck, are there any near-death experiences in the Bible or talk of that or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And they've had their historical doctrine that's going back to Plato with his story of her, a soldier that dies on the battlefield and, comes back to life on his funeral pyre, before he's burned, obviously, and tells the narrative. And then I think it's Corinthians, Paul talks about not knowing, whether he's in the body or out of the body and which dimension he's in. And that is a near-death experience, and it is described where he was left out of a certain city on one of his journeys, left for dead, and then his friends come and, pick up his body, and he comes back to it. That is not a description of his vision on the road to Damascus or wherever it was that, he saw Jesus initially and he's blinded. That is not a near-death experience. That was a vision. And they're different. So we can tell from the history of our research looking at these things which pattern of dialogue fits which kind of experience. And we can also go back and we can look at things like gurus or shamans, and you'll see these individuals picked out in their various environments, whether it's Native American or in India, and studies, there was a big study done in India on these things. And if the narrative fits, you can see it was a near-death experience, and that person who had the experience would have after effects that were treated as, you know, a avatar, you know, and that maybe even build parts of a religion around them from that perspective. So those kind of things happen, and we have a framework now for looking at those things and discovering how that really fits the vernacular of the research on these experiences. The other side of dogmatism, which I wanted to get to, is that you talked about the religious side. There's also the scientific materialist side. You know, the humanists and those who just, you know, this is it. You know, when the body's done, that's it. There's no consciousness going forward. And all of those, you know, the super skeptic mode. For that, I'd like to recommend the book that Ian has just facilitated publishing. It was originally done by some authors from Holland, and we've had it translated to English, and we've added cases to it. It's called The Self Does Not Die, Verified Paranormal Phenomena from Near-Death Experiences. And the Dutch book originally had, I think, something like 84 identified experiences that have been researched. And then when we became involved in that, and our researchers participated in getting it translated to English, we've added another 20-odd cases of the super, you know, it's really addressed to the hardcore skeptic, saying, if you're going to have a materialist model, you have to explain these experiences, how people, and I'll give some examples, can come back with knowledge if there's no way to explain, you know, if their bodies are in a hospital and they're instrumented, they're flatlined, and yet they're coming back with verifiable information. That's the verified paranormal phenomenon. And then we research and say, well, we can authenticate that these individuals could not have known. So it authenticates their experience, basically. Their consciousness outside of the operating physical body. And there's 100 and some cases there, and so people who are even satisfied the spiritual phenomena on their own, but if they want to help, you know, if they want to have discussions with those they see as skeptics who don't believe about a spiritual reality, and get a copy of this book and share some of the cases in there. I'll give you one of the more dramatic ones that I know of.
Well, and before you do that, Chuck, about how much of the populace now do you think has had an NDE, near-death experience, versus even 20 years ago from now?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a statistic like that. I know a couple of surveys, and they said the prevalence is something like 1 in 20 adults at some point in their lifetime have had, you know, metaphysical experience that would be very akin to a near-death experience. The research scale, the Grayson scale, which measures these, it's a survey instrument, and people fill out, you know, various aspects of spiritual experiences, and they can get a rating for it. So, you know, just a general survey of the population, I don't know how reliable that is, but it was at 5% at one point in time. Certainly translates into the millions.
Yeah, it does.
And there's a high incident population, of course, in people who have had cardiac arrest and been resuscitated. You know, there's some populations where you really expect to see a higher statistical phenomenon.
We're talking about at least around 40 million people or so that have experienced that throughout the world. And what was the question? Anyhow, so you were going to mention a case out of the book. Now, what's the name of the book again?
The Self Does Not Die, and you can find it on the IANS website, like on Amazon. The Self Does Not Die, Verified paranormal phenomena from near-death experiences. And it's pretty thick, and a lot of it is given a lot of detail, but because it's trying to address that hardcore skeptic, materialist perspective and saying, well, you have to explain, whatever your model is, your scientific model of reality, you have to explain this phenomenon. Now, if it was just the Raymond Moody book and just a few anecdotes, and if we didn't have 40 years of research on authenticating these things, yeah, who can tell? They're just stories. But once the research is established through a scientific process of documenting and saying, now we've got hundreds and maybe millions of these, and we can find them and we can establish a criteria which is replicatable time after time in studies of people who have these experiences and how it affects them. I mean, it's time to take this as a serious phenomenon and not just dismiss it because somebody has a worldview that didn't fit it previously. The one I wanted to share is Dr. George Rodnayev, who was a Russian scientist. He was a prodigy in Russia. This is back during the Cold War. He had 3 doctorates, I think it was. One was a medical degree, one was psychiatry, and the other was hard science, like chemistry or something like that, I forget. But he was viewed as somebody that, was at the pinnacle of Russian science, and he wanted to come to the U.S. on a visa, and the KGB didn't want him to leave the country, so they arranged an accident, ran him over on the sidewalk. And his body was declared dead, was taken to the morgue, and he was in the morgue for 3 days in a cooler. And they got his body out to do a student autopsy. What was fortunate for him, his uncle was the supervising physician. And as they started to do the autopsy, they detected signs of life and resuscitated him, and he did the recovery. And in 3 days, it took him 3 days to recover the ability to vocalize. He was able to share some of what I'm going to tell you about from his experience. One of the things he can do is he's out of body and he's trying to understand this new state of awareness and consciousness. Body's in the morgue, and but you think in that context, you can just think and you're there if you want to go someplace instantly. So he thought about going home to his apartment, and his wife wasn't there, and no one was there, so he went across the hall to his neighbor's apartment where a couple that had a young baby, a newborn, who was in constant distress. As he visited his neighbors in his conscious state, he said he could communicate with the child. The baby was still aware from its spiritual aspect of him, and he discovered that the distress the child was having was a broken hip. But
Oh, wow.
none of the adults in the environment knew of it. The baby had been dropped by a nurse.
Oh, my God.
Right after the
Wow.
and the nurse had covered it up. So back now, when he's resuscitated in his body and then can communicate 3 days later, he tells what's wrong with the child, and they authenticate. First of all, when he was in that apartment and he's communicating with the child in whatever spiritual language they use, he tells the baby, you might as well stop crying. They don't know what's wrong with you. And for a while, the baby stopped crying. So, one, they validated that part of the story. They also validated everything, including confronting the nurse, who then admitted it, the incident that had happened. So that's what we call veridical perception. The body is in a state where you cannot expect it to have had any kind of conscious contact with the kind of information he brought back. And those are kinds of cases that have been researched and authenticated that you'll find in that book. And so you got to have answers for that phenomenon The other part of a near-death experience, which is just profound in my mind, is the life review and the nature of it as it was described by Tom Sawyer when I first heard of this, of having a life review. And not all experiencers have a life review, only a certain portion of the population do, and we have the statistics on that. But Tom's was profound in the sense that he described being able to re-experience his life or an episode in his life from 3 points of view. The first point of view is of himself going through the event, complete with the feelings and all detail. The second perspective is that of people who were in relationship to him in that event. He became them and felt as though he was that person experiencing Tom from that aspect of the event. And then the third perspective is you can have all detail of the surrounding environment. So, quick example. He was a young man, and in his review, he's reliving one Saturday when his chore was to mow the yard. He dilly-dallied until his dad yelled at him, and so he's out there mowing, rushing through his chore because he wants to be off playing with his buddies. And in the house behind this yard he's mowing lived his aunt. And his aunt had asked him not to mow down some wildflowers, which she wanted to use in a project maybe with kids. Well, anyhow, he's rushing through this chore. He sees the flowers. Oh, she won't care. He mows them down. Well, now his life review, he gets to relive this event. And he is himself and he goes through the event. He then becomes his aunt, discovering discovering the flowers mowed down, and her quandary, her turmoil. He wouldn't have forgot, but he wouldn't have done it on purpose. Each of those kinds of, should she confront him? She's wrestling with all this dialogue, internal dialogue, and then eventually decides not to confront him. So he gets to be her, going through her experience, what his behavior created. The third perspective was he said he could have been a bird in the tree looking down on the whole event, or he could have been in the yard. He could have counted the bugs in the grass that he'd been mowing. I mean, the detail was totally complete.
Wow.
And he gave several examples of other episodes in his life review in that book, What Tom Sawyer Learned from Dying. And so understanding that comprehension of what a life review is about, what near-death experiences tell us time after time, there's no judgment in the spiritual dimension. Your only judging is you judging yourself as you get to relive your life and all the different angles that life review presents to you. So saying something nice to somebody that you didn't even realize was a major event for them, in your life review is the jewel. You'll see the ripple effect is that person you helped lift their day, their spirits, and they go on and they touch other people's lives with a positive, aspect. So you get to see the ripple effect of all that going on. Of course, on the other side of the coin, if you dumped on somebody and you lowered, their experience, emotionally for that moment, you get to be that and see what that might have rippled out to be. So I think just understanding a life review is a major learning tool from these events. And it certainly is the golden rule implemented completely. And I think it's why all religions have some aspect of that nature of, being kind to one another is being very important to how we conduct our lives.
Got it.
Ken Ring, who was one of the founders of IANS, he published a book called Lessons from the Light, 20 years into, the history of researching this. And in that book, he coined the term the benign virus, because people who are listening to this and who listen to near-death experiences and read those stories are transformed in the same way experiences are changed. They become more positive. Number one, you know, this is a trend. They don't immediately flip a switch, but they tend to become less fearful of death. There are no atheists after a near-death experience. They may not necessarily become theists, but they know there's something more. And they lose their fear of death. Maybe not the fear of dying, because dying is a different issue with physical struggle. But the fear of death and what comes after. They become more altruistic. Near-death experiences become less interested in the almighty dollar, and they become more caring and giving, and just the nature of it, you know, it's transformed. There's a very high divorce rate among near-death experiencers because they become a new person. And often the relationship doesn't survive that change in their demeanor. Another aspect of the after effects of benign virus is they become more spiritual and less dogmatically religious or atheistic or materialistic. So just learning about this phenomenon changes people in a very positive way.
Now let me ask you this, Chuck. In near-death experiences, do people do they become what you call walk-ins? Do you know what a walk-in is?
Yeah, I know the thing.
Do they go through that process as well?
I don't have a lot of experience in that. I don't want to really project any kind of judgment on it. I met a person who said he was a walk-in, and I understand the nature of it from they aren't connected to the history of the person they replaced. They spiritually came back into the body, into the body, which they now inhabit. It used to be inhabited by another spirit. You know, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's just, no, that's not a large part of the population that I've encountered.
Got it. And for those of you that don't know what a walk-in is two souls that initially have made an agreement before the body is born to utilize the same body at different time periods. One soul uses the body for one part of life, and typically some kind of major transition takes place, or some kind of major havoc takes place, an accident or some kind of thing, and then the other soul will take over and then go from there. And typically, and I don't know. I've never heard of anybody that has had a near-death experience that was also a walk-in as well. I've never heard of that, but I don't know that could that can be negated either. So and typically that person's a walk-in because they generally don't remember they come in and they take over the body, and the only thing they have to understand the history or the background of that body, that physical body, is through the molecular structure of the memory of the cells in the body. That's the only thing they have to derive from to remember being born, and anything else that happened during the first part of that life. And so a lot of times they don't remember their friends, they don't remember their family. There's a lot of stuff they don't remember at all, and it's like they have amnesia, and they don't know who what's going on, to a great extent. And so they just have general information, and that's about it. But like I said, I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody that had a near-death experience that also came in as a walk-in later on, or at that transitional period as well. But anyhow, go ahead.
Okay, Andrew, I don't know how much time we got. Can I go into a different?
Yeah, we got 24 minutes. Whatever you want to go with, go for it.
Okay, good. I want to talk from a different perspective now. one that I've come to embrace. I see that you did put up a link to the video of a presentation I did in the 2011 IANS conference. It's called Embrace the Mystery. And I really recommend that video for some of the touch points of what I want to talk about now. It's how there's a greater spiritual reality around us as we become aware of it. Makes life easier, makes it easier to understand and to get in touch with it. That reality that I was talking about originally, you know, finding out what's real. In that presentation, I talk about a book called Evolution Angel. And it's written by an emergency room doctor. And it's his story of how after 25 years he's written this book. He was originally in his 20s and he thought he wanted to be a rock musician. He had a big job. And he's driving home 3 o'clock one morning. He's alone in the car and he falls asleep at the wheel. And he said he felt like physical hands touch his shoulders and he hears a voice, "Wake up, Michael." And which time he yanks the steering wheel and avoids head-on collision with a concrete abutment from an overpass. So basically, this event saves his life. He goes a little further and pulls over and falls asleep. A little later, after that, he loses his job. His girlfriend relationship breaks up. The place where he's staying burns down. He loses all his personal effects. He's sleeping on a cot in a friend's basement, and he's having a dialogue with what he thinks to be an angel. You know, that's kind of what he projects this intervention to be, you know, from an angel, the language he uses. And so at one point he asks, what can I call you? What's your name? And what came back was, you can call us Evolution Angel. I want to emphasize that plural to singular. The spiritual dimension is much, which is vast, and it's everything. And yet, it will often relate to us in our humanness in a one-on-one kind of aspect. So all of those spiritual sources related to him as the evolution angel, singular.
That's interesting.
So,
I've known other people that to talk to a similar energy, and they call them the One. The evolutionary angel, I've never heard of before, but that's an interesting title. But and I don't know if they're the one and the same or not. But you know, I've never heard of that. But go ahead.
well, the evolution angel, the original book was written by Michael Abrams, Dr. Michael Abrams, which is a pen name because he felt like, you know, his medical career would be exposed by this kind of a, you know, a message. And then later, after he retired from as a physician, he now issued a new edition of the book, Evolution Angel, by his name, which is R. Todd Michael. Anyhow, in that friend's basement, as he's having a dialogue with Angel, he decides he wants to be a doctor. And he has a liberal arts degree, no prerequisite for going to med school at all. Standing friends who know his track record think, yeah, sure, right. But he does the work, and he doubles up on the course load to get some of the prerequisites, and passes the MCAT to get admitted to med school. He says as he's going through the curriculum, he has an assignment where he doesn't have some of the prerequisite knowledge. He'd be in the library, he's read the book. You know, couldn't we all use this kind of guidance? You know, he's guided to the answers. And he gets to the rotations, he reaches the emergency room internship and decides that's his passion, that's what he wants to do. And here, 25 years later, he's writing the book. Why I bring this up is because of this dialogue he has. As he's in the emergency room, he doesn't save everybody physically. And that bothers him. And he wants to know, why do bad things happen to people? Why aren't all prayers answered? You know, he's taking philosophical questions. And so he's having this dialogue, and he asks two questions that just grip me, and I want to share this. The first question was, how does the non-physical interact with the physical? And they came back with the metaphor that, well, let's say, for example, we could manifest as a mosquito, and as it flies around your head, and you're attracted, your attention is drawn to that, it will alter your path, the path of your life going forward from that point in such a way, precisely, that you will avoid an accident a couple days in the future. I was a computer jock, ones and zeros, truth tables, branch. That's a lot of permutations to get from a mosquito. But, okay. So a little later in the book, he asks the question again, repeats it essentially for elaboration. How does the non-physical interact with the physical? And it came back and said, well, you remember the example of the mosquito? Yeah. Well, let's say instead it's a cloud formation up in the sky, and it captures your attention, and you're raptured by it, and as your attention's drawn to that, and it does that same thing as the mosquito in the sense it alters the path of your life going forward from that point. Precisely. And if need be, we can manifest that cloud formation up there as water vapor, cumulus, whatever. Or we can make it appear as though it's there in your mind and you won't know the difference. Okay, this is the stage, it's the play. And so we get to the age-old conundrum, free will versus predetermination. And it's both, because let's say they know us better than we know ourselves, and if we're supposed to turn right up ahead, they can put the influences there, and we get to the choice point, and we'll say, oh, I think I want to go right. But if I'm in a particular petulant mood that day, and I decide, I'm going to go left, and all of a sudden the resistance is there, and it doesn't feel right, or whatever, and eventually I was like, well, maybe I really should, I think I'm going to go the other way. So they can influence, I don't say that happens 100%, but, that is a sort of cooperative environment. So if we're in tune with the spiritual nature of what's around us, our life becomes easier to trust in those things that will be, I hear time and again from experiences, one thing we can give up is worry. If we just trust and let go that the spiritual dimension that we're a part of is there for us and supports us in our path, it eliminates a lot of the struggle. One of the things that in my groups, I will ask, do we have any near-death experiencers here? And well, I don't say near-death. Do we have any experience here? People will assume that we have near-death. Your hands go up, and they didn't hold my hand up. They said, everyone should have their hand in the air, because experiences are a spectrum. They start from that little coincidence, which is just too odd to be a coincidence. It's a serendipity, a synchronicity that we cannot ascribe to being happenstance. It has meaning in our life somehow. That little tickle, all the way through, tripping out, going through the light, and, the other end of the universe. That's a long, continuous spectrum, and we're all on that at various points in our life with various experiences. And so it's really allowing that reality of that dimension come into our awareness that makes life easier. And many times it's a question of stepping out of a situation just to observe it. Not running away from our emotions, because our emotions are tremendous signals for us to pay attention to, and to allow. They're a beautiful part of life, but not to be necessarily controlled by them. And to have a greater perspective, which puts things. I remember one anecdote, experiences saying that they saw individuals, spiritual beings, just lined up to have a physical incarnation, because this physical event is precious from a spiritual perspective. We may struggle, we may think that some of it is really yucky, and I cringe when people say they're anxious to get back to the others. If we take perspective and just assume we're eternal spiritual beings, this little piece of reality from our birth to our death is a jewel of experience that cannot happen in the spiritual dimension. And making the most of this is really what life is all about, is making it really give us the best opportunity to savor and have it all, milk it for all that we can get from it as a beautiful opportunity.
Absolutely. So now, Chuck, I don't know that we actually, or that you actually did this, but how do you define a near-death experience, and what qualifies one?
Well, there are textbook kind of definitions, and the research says that the validation of an experience is the after effects. And those can happen. We have people just driving down an expressway, and they have a mental marker of where they were at when the experience started, and they're just a little past an off-ramp, and they're back. And so in physical life, it's a couple of seconds, but they can have an experience which takes hours to describe. The most significant way I can describe it is when you have an event in your life that does not diminish, the memory of it, I liken it to the birth of my children. That moment when you first encountered that other little precious being, or, other significant events in life, whatever those are for you, those memories don't fade. They're with you, in a constant clarity. Unlike a hallucination. Hallucinations don't even come close to experiences. Hallucinations, the memories fade, the details vary all over the place, they're forgotten in time. But these kind of events, they stick with you in the clarity. And sometimes when you're hearing that the experience is going into all these little details, it can kind of get, yeah, I know, I've heard this before. Now, Howard Stone's very famous experience that I encountered when I first started to get involved with IANS. And he said, I don't need to tell my experience. I've told it hundreds of times, but he does it, and he does it in the detail because of how sharing it has helped others. And so that is a service as well. You can share those experiences. Back to the blind men and the elephants. If we all get to hear these other experiences, we grasp a greater understanding of this larger reality.
I didn't realize that Howard Stern was an experiencer. Now let me ask you this. Well, first of all, have you had a near-death experience yourself?
Well, yeah, actually it was a capstone experience in a sense. It was just, you get what you need in these experiences. I had a bleed out esophagus, and one of having to have 4.5 units of blood, which I guess is almost a total overhaul or refill. As I bled out, I'm in the back of the ambulance. I'm looking at the lights, the ceiling, and it's kind of like they all blend into one. And I'm thinking, since I had years of experience with NDEs at that point, I'm thinking, oh boy, maybe this is mine. I'm just ready to go. And what I recall hearing, and I don't know if I was in the body or out at that point, is the EMT working on my body says to the driver, can you find a parking lot and pull over? I'm having trouble getting a pulse. And the driver says, no problem. With the lights flashing in the middle of this busy 2-lane highway, he just hits the brakes and comes to a stop right there. So, yeah, that was pretty significant, and definitely from the physical point of view, near that. But, there wasn't really more to it than that. I don't think I needed more. I just kind of knew, the nature of this at that point.
Wow. So now let me ask you another question. Can an abduction, alien UFO abduction, be one and the same as a near-death experience as well? And are they?
Well, I'll recall, I think remember the author. There was an author that wrote a book called Six, I think it was, Abduction Experiences. And one of them was a woman who wanted to know, well, where's the light? What about the spirit? I mean, she's in the UFO with the typical abduction scenario with the grays and the different sides. I mean, I tried to dabble in the UFO environment for a while, and the NDE community and its nature was so big, I just couldn't, it was too much. I couldn't stretch myself that far. But I got this one book, and it had a nice crossover. So what they did was they took her into another part of the craft, and she had a light experience, and she met a light being, and they were just, basically the message was, they're my children too, meaning the aliens. So it was confirming of a kind of near-death experience and the spiritual awareness that says, yes, they're all one universe, and we come in lots of variety. You want to get a good description of the other world and near-death. I recommend the book by an experiencer named Natalie Sudman, N-A-T-A-L-I-E, Sudman, S-U-D-M-A-N. And the book is called Application of Impossible Things. Natalie was a civilian engineer working with the Army Corps of Engineers in Iraq, and the vehicle she was riding in hit a roadside bomb. She went into a blink environment where, she said you could see the fragments of the vehicle and all that just suspended in the air, and she's kind of in her conscious state, out of her body, and she goes into multiple realms in her description. Using engineering language, she's able to say what those different realms really kind of meant and work like, even though it's one experience all in one blink moment. I'll give you an example. She said she went to a realm which was the healing realm, where she was working with another being who she was familiar with. They had prior relationship from a spiritual perspective. And there was a trainee spirit there, being that was working with them, learning. And what they were doing was working on her physical body for her to re-inhabit it, at the end of her experience. And they were laughing, they were joking, having humor about what they could do with this physical body to change her life experience going forward after she's back in it. For example, her one eye was injured, and she said, "Oh, we could make you blind. Look, just think how that'll change your life going forward." Yeah, so, or I think she had a really severely injured right hand or wrist. And they said, "Oh, we can have your wrist be amputated, and you'll have to learn how to do everything left-handed," joking about how that would, create wrinkles in her physical life going forward. Of course, she said after she was back in the body, she had a totally different perspective on, what those kind of changes were like. And she did do that PTSD, and she has gone into the field of helping people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, work with their problems and gain resolution, because she had to go through it. So, Natalie Sudman, Application of Impossible Things. It's a very thin book. And I've been in this field for 20 years or more when I first encountered Natalie in her book. And I had to take it in sips, because it's just one of those books where you read a little bit and you think, I think I just got to step away and think about that for a while. It's a totally unique perspective and a different way of painting the picture.
Got it. So we got 4 minutes left, Chuck. What now? And what happens hereafter with Chuck, Swedrock, and Ian?
Well, I think I'm going to be going out to speak more to groups about this. I've been knocking on doors. I've been trying to get this information into the VA so that they'll stop drugging people and putting them in mental wards when they're, or those they'll call it PTSD just because they can't. We have research that shows that nearly 50%, a little less than 50% of veterans who've had combat experiences have these kinds of experiences, but they have to stuff it. And because they can't share it. I've gone to the chaplains in the VA, and they will look at our training video. We have a training video on our website, but for healthcare, you know, just put your belief system on hold and listen. That's basic, you know, patient involvement. You know, don't discount what you don't understand. Just let them share their experience and don't dismiss it as, you know, hallucination or whatever. It's real to that person, so honor that. And I'm also trying to knock on doors of pastors and say, look, I'll bet your congregation, our prevalence rate says you should have, in a congregation of a couple hundred people, you should have multiple experiencers that are part of it. Have they ever been able to share with you, you know, or did you dogmatism get in the way? And I've had experience helping pastors get more comfortable with this phenomenon. They thank me afterwards for helping them broaden their perspective. So that I think is my path going forward, is to help move that ball forward in terms of gaining a broader awareness and chip away at those false fundamentalism.
So even with all the technology, all the social media, all the media available to us, there's still not enough people that understand this phenomenon. That's what I hear you saying. So if people,
Right.
We got about 2 minutes left. If people want to get a hold of you for a speaking engagement or whatever, what's the best way for them to do that, Charles? Chuck?
Oh, you can email me, Chuck, chucks@ians.org. And, you know, I'll just say there is nothing like hearing somebody in person. This is a great venue you got here. It's wonderful. But having somebody in front of you in the flesh telling their experience or their path, I have found nothing. And that's why we bring speakers to town to tell their story, to Arizona. You know, we could get their recordings off of the internet and all that, but having that person in the flesh, there's something about that which is so principally valuable.
Got it. So I want to thank you, Chuck, for coming on and talking to us and sharing your valuable time with us. I want to, and I want to thank everybody else for stopping by and just listening. So anyhow, we'll talk some more and see what's going on. But to all of you, thank you for stopping by. Have a God-guided week. Be the love that you are, always have been, and always will be. Aloha.
Thank you.
Your content recording blog stop radio. Goodbye.